whether they are aiming at big data center providers. So the thing is that how they update your databases into the, the server-side databases, how the malware actually writers update your databases so that every time you get into a particular web application, it fetches the database from backend and renders you the web page. So the idea behind this kind of triggering this kind of attack is like vulnerability into 1 to 2. So if we have a SQL injection and we get a particular kind of error, how we can use that error to launch cross-site scripting or delivering malware out of it. And the thing is that in order to execute this attack, there are a lot of things depends upon the database design, what kind of database the server is using or the application is actually using. So what we did that we conduct this attack in one of the biggest service provider, and I can take up the name, that's not a problem, it's Yahoo. Yahoo has some problem in their website, so we tried this attack, works pretty successful. So how it actually works. So the thing is that these are the strings actually. So we have a vulnerable web application and we have a parameter called ID. So the basic thing is that inject, take then 1 equal to 1 to just bypass. So the main concern about this kind of attack is like we always have an impression, if we have a SQL injection, let's enumerate the database. Let's get the username and password. Yeah, that's okay, you get the control, but somewhere it is not exploitable. So if we get a particular scenario of errors, we can exploit it through SQLXSSI. So if you think that this is the red mark, the kind of red string that is being provided in hex having our payload. So how we actually execute that attack in the context of Yahoo application, let's see. So we have this kind of scenario. So the web application is vulnerable to SQL injection. We just did some stuff, injected buffer to see what it gives us a lot of errors. And it gives you your database name and all the thing. It's quite okay, but we don't want that. Because since being a malware writers, we are looking into malware analyzers. We are trying to look into the techniques or the upcoming techniques that can be used by the malware writers. So actually the error gets rendered in the browser. So what we did, we inject the payload. It again gets rendered in your browser and gives us the XSS. So through SQL parameters, we put the XSS payloads in secret variable values. It renders back and gives us this thing. So another example comes like, we thought like, why not to serve the Excel malware? So we again did that. We injected the payload with the iframe, but you cannot see that iframe, whatever, because it just rendered in the hex string and do the things. So this kind of attack tells that you can even update the database dynamically and using the update SQL query. Once you do that, database will be updated and the things will be very bad. Every time Yahoo or whatever the web application brings up, calls the data from database, and it is gone. So the next very thing is you inject a malicious, so this is just a kind of stringent thing. So image with a malicious request, this is all possible. So all variants of XSS is possible through SQLXSSI. Just we need to look into the kind of database design we have and how we can exploit. So the scenario of this kind of vulnerability looking is to just show that why, when you're doing a penetration testing or vulnerability assessment, why manual review and manual testing is much more wider and have a greater impact when we really look into the application into this kind of attacks. Yeah.
He's using just post commands and also just escaping anything that you use with their statements. Is that enough to
no, exactly. I mean, I just simply get into the stringbuilder.com. I put my payload, convert it into the hex, and use that. Because the thing is that these kind of queries, one and select, and we actually termed it as union SQL poisoning. So we use in terms of MySQL. But when you provide this, doesn't escape or thing, because we are exploiting the errors. So errors is actually getting rendered back into the website, the browser. So it doesn't filter, doesn't do anything, doesn't unescape anything. So the error we put XSS payload, and browser take it as a content and executes it. And I would really like to thank my friend 1337RB who actually works with me over this SQLXSSI. So what we actually got that one vulnerability can lead to another. Testing is inadvertent. SQLI can be used in a differential manner if we look into this kind of scenarios. Advanced step in conducting access through SQLI, and of course, database design matters. The very next kind of attack I'm going to talk about is document rendering attacks. We must have gone through the file uploading attacks, but that is true. So this is a paper that I actually released in 2009, but why I'm talking about still, this attack is still working on a number of web apps. We gave this kind of issues to Script, we gave this to SlideShare, we gave this issue to VR, so a lot of networks which actually patch this kind of vulnerability. And you can find up the paper on my website, which is also released in open research. So the concept behind this kind of attack is, before starting up this attack, I performed this attack in Oracle web applications, but since they took 1.5 years to patch this kind of vulnerability, the reason because they have a lot of dependency. So 63 versions are going to be updated because of this. So the concept behind thing is that you get into the web application, right? And web application allows you to upload your resume. And the web application also allows you to preview that resume. Maybe they don't allow particular kind of format, and when we go into a particular kind of organization where they want to give you a job, you can, okay, I need a doc format, or I need a docx format. So we found that how it is possible. So this attack comes pretty handy in that situation. So what we did actually, in Microsoft Word, we can provide hyperlinking, where we say, okay, I want to go to that domain, HTTP, something like that. But if we edit it and put if we edit the particular hyperlink and put our injected payload into it and rebuild the Microsoft Word file and uploads it onto the server and render it, things all are over. So this is really good, and it still works on a lot of web applications which are having a design problem like this. And let's see how we execute it on the particular vendor application. So we just built that enterprise web application, and we have these kind of hyperlinks. And if you look into the bar of this MS Word, it says JavaScript document.cookie. So in order to conduct this attack, we use DOM injection, and we inject the value or this URL to be JavaScript document.cookie or whatever. And we rebuild the Microsoft Word file, save it. So when we upload it on the web application and just render it, okay, I want to preview it. The nature of this kind of attack is really stealth because of the factor that these all attacks become persistent. So whenever the person in the HR department want to preview your resume and do this, okay, I want to preview it in a web format and do that, and it will occur in this way. So you can steal up the cookie and the game is all over, because most of these kind of web applications are being administered by the admin, and so you got the cookie and the things all are over. So we use these kind of attacks a lot, because say previously we have where they allow they can be considered as a file uploading attacks, but since the nature and the operandi a bit varies, so we don't consider into that scenario. And now I'm going to talk about the real-time case study. We give it to this vulnerability to Script platform, and it transforms into the different scenario. We still use PowerPoint template, putting our payloads into the hyperlinks, but actually Script previously used XML-based authoring. So whatever the content you provide first changes into the XML, then it being rendered into the Flash player. So this vulnerability was given in the last year, but patched a bit late. But some of the various networks and various web applications are still using this kind of scenario where they render content in Flash player. So what it actually happens, to just understand a little bit flow. So your database, you have in a server-side language, .NET, ASP, Java, whatever, having an interface with the database. So there is an XML file which having some configuration in it. So it builds up the XML file based on the sum of information from the database, and it renders in Flash, and user views it. So this is quite a general platform for the Script when we gave that vulnerability. And we have actually released a detailed paper on white paper platform XML based link on Flaw, and you can download it. That everybody is just open research. So what it happens actually, so if we look at the scenario, we upload that file, iPaper platform starts converting it. We get the message like, okay, extract the script cookie for me. And when we clicked it, we got the cookie. So look at the scenario of this kind of attack in a, not in a centralized environment, but where you are sharing your documents with a lot of people. So they are accessing these kind of documents through their account, right? So if somebody goes into that, look into it, clicks it, okay, there is some kind of gift for you, and you can get the cookie out of it. So I think like these kind of flaws are getting really hampering and making much more impact in the web application world if we consider the Web 2.0 at this point of time. So now I'm going to talk about a very popular stuff that we are facing nowadays, the gadgets and the widgets. So there's a bit difference between a widget and a gadget. So we found this kind of issue in one of the finest news serving platform in US. So they provide widgets, and it's being used by a lot of military organizations, a lot of news specifics and all that. So they induce a content when you allow a particular widget to be included in it. So what they can be done, so as described web widget, so they both have a diverse functionalities because they conduct advertisements, traffic analysis, news, and feeds. And what kind of web widget code snippets we have? We can have a JavaScript, we can have Adobe, we can have a code for embedding Windows Media Player, we have a Silverlight plugins. So what's the idea behind this kind of attack is, whenever you get registered with a particular web service provider, it gives you the web widget and it gives you the code. You went to your blog, right? You put that code in your blog, and when you save the blog and start posting, you will get advertisements in your blog, right? So the thing is that the point of introspection here is that where is the security model? So if you include that particular web widget in your blog, right, is it providing some kind of access control from that particular web service provider, which I can exploit? So I don't know whether actually you heard about the name Outbrain. Anybody have heard about the service provider Outbrain? Well, they provide a lot of news-specific services to the biggest clients here in US, and they inject a client with their news and everything through that widget. So this vulnerability lies in this kind of network. So what it actually does, so this just gives you the overall scenario of how the web widget works. They design a code snippet, they design a web widget, and they start serving onto the different platforms on the web. So you can put it into your Blogger, you can use it in your MySpace, you can use it in Windows Live Spaces. And you can do a lot of things based on that, depends upon the functionality of widget. I have just put the details of this vulnerability to understand the attack, but I will give you the real kind of explanation here. So if somebody wants to look at it afterwards, can get the real scenario. So that Outbrain, what it actually does, it gives you the widget for advertisement purposes. You include that widget in your blog spot, right? So what it does actually, so they think like that this is a good design practice. So you get registered. So what they can do, they are using a redirection from their website with the registered users, right? So if you get registered with them, you put the kind of widget in your web application or in the blog spot, and you can use that particular, so the service provider use that web redirection link to get onto your blog and use for advertisement purposes. But this gives a real design flaw because they don't put any kind of access control. They only think like that registered user can be directly did that. So what we did actually in this case, we actually exploit this vulnerability, this design flaw to serve malware. So for example, consider a scenario, a malware writer, right, register into that particular website to get a web widget, right? This is possible. He gets a registered user. He picked that kind of widget and adds up to his blog spot. It means that malware writer website gets authenticated, gets registered with the service provider. So now service provider is actually providing a www something dot